Alright, thank you for purchasing one of my oil pans. Hopefully this video will give you some tips and tricks to make your install easier. First thing you want to do when you unbox your oil pan and pickup tube, make sure you put on the Atlas Industries sticker, because that will of course give you about 5 to 7 horsepower depending on where your dyno corrects at. You want to get your pickup tube out and take a look at it. Make sure all the bolts are installed and nothing fell out in the box. You want to make sure the gasket is on the end. All of the pickup tubes and oil pans I get are brand new. The pickup tubes are mild steel because, well, they're submerged in engine oil in the engine, but sometimes in storage they will get a little patina that won't affect anything. If you see that, it's not a used tube, it just got slightly patinaed in storage. So the first thing you're going to notice is that your original Atlas engine, the 4200, had a hole for the pickup tube in the front sump right here. So you're going to notice that you're going to have to drill 2 holes. Now this can seem very daunting, but it's really not a big deal. You don't want to drill a through hole, you do want to drill and tap. It's a M6 by 1 hole, and what you want to do is, with the engine right side up, you want to make sure that you drill and have a vacuum located near the drill hole so that it can suck down any chips that would have fallen onto the floor anyway. And you want to drill and tap that. Make sure, again, if you go all the way through, you don't want to use a through bolt because that could hit the crankshaft. You want to make sure you're drilling and tapping and just using the bolt supplied with the pickup tube. So when you go to install the pickup tube, of course, make sure that the gasket is correctly installed in the end. As you can see, as these come from GM, these are a little bit flimsy, the tabs here, so it's possible, while I try to pack things very well, that they could have gotten a little bit damaged during shipping. So you want to make sure, once you have your holes lined up, and again, they don't have to be perfect, they just need to hold the pickup tube in. You want to install your pickup tube at the front, make sure it's fully seated. Now make sure you follow the GM torque specs. These bolts only get torqued to about 8 to 10 foot-pounds, so you don't want to reef on them. Again, they're only M6. So once you have your pickup tube installed, make sure nothing when you were doing install might have fallen into the end of the pickup tube or anything that could get sucked up into the oil pan. So again, there's quite a few different options for oil pans. So this is kind of a generic video. Yours might look a little bit different from mine here. But you're going to install the oil pan as a dry fit first. Do not put on RTV yet. Install it as a dry fit. So obviously your engine won't have studs. I have studs and holes in different locations because I've welded about 35 different oil pans of custom nature on this block. So I put studs in here obviously so I don't rip the threads out. But one of the very important things you want to do, and you want to make sure that you're taking a look at here, is on the back of the engine, you want to make sure that the oil pan is flush. Now the oil pan can move, but you want to make sure that the oil pan is completely flush with the back of the block. If you don't do this and the oil pan is moved up, when you go to tighten your transmission bolts, there's going to be a problem. Transmission bell housing is a lot stronger than the oil pan. That will win, and you will end up having a very bad day. So make sure that is most important, that is flush with the back of the block. Now you'll look at the GM procedure and you'll see that you'll want to go in a crisscross pattern. I'd highly suggest with these oil pans, I've never had anyone have a leak yet with this procedure, start in the back. And the reason is, no matter how well I fixture, all these oil pans are welded completely on this engine block. There is still some bow. It is thin aluminum, and no matter what I do or fixture or machine later, they will all slightly bow. So you want to make sure that the oil pan is flush in the back first. So you want to start tightening all of your bolts from the back and then work your way forward. Now, again, you will notice that there is a slight gap here as this is bowed, even again while it was welded. So once you have a dry fit, you'll take the oil pan back off. I would highly suggest installing sealant on the oil pan and not the block, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to install. Now, these are the areas. I've planed them flat, but again, it's not perfect. So you're going to want to install a little bit of extra RTV on these surfaces here, where both pans are mated up on each side. You'll also notice on the engine block, this doesn't have the rear main cover on there, but any areas where there are gaps, you're going to want to make sure to install those with a little bit of extra RTV on the very ends. Again, I took the pickup tube off just for this demonstration. So again, line up the pan in the back. Now again, I'm using a torque gun because I don't care about this block. You should probably actually torque to spec. Now again, you'll notice there is a slight bow. It's not of concern. Again, just make sure you have a tiny bit of extra RTV there when you tighten it down. No more gap and you're good to go. There's a couple different specifics now with the oil pan on, and I suggest doing this with the oil pan on the block because it's going to prevent you from getting any damaging pieces of metal inside your engine. Now you're going to notice over here, this is the 5-cylinder pickup tube. Obviously that's going to be a problem there. So you're going to want to grind out or Dremel. I actually find, as hack as this sounds, using a Sawzall with a fine tooth short blade works extremely well. Make sure when you cut this that you have something shoved up in the hole here so there's no possibility of getting anything inside. But again, I suggest doing this actually with the oil pan already installed just because it prevents any chips from going in the engine. Now, depending on the oil pan, again, this is a representative oil pan. Sometimes you might get the oil pan and I will have a fastener taped to the side of the oil pan. That's a specific fastener like a cap screw or something detailed that because of the shape of the pan, there wasn't a lot of clearance and you'll want to make sure to use there in that location that I have it taped. Now moving up to the front, if you opted to have the machined AC blocks installed, again, these are your AC blocks. You'll notice the oil pan doesn't line up perfectly with the end of the block. That's just how the oil pan is cast. You didn't install the oil pan wrong. I weld these tubes with the oil pan all the way back and perfectly centered in position. I have a fixture that locates these before I weld them on. So don't worry about this gap here. It will install correctly. And when we move up to the front here, these 3 bolts along with the 2 bolts in the back here, just remember they're not M8, they're M6, so you want to follow the torque procedure and don't over torque those or you're going to have a bad time. Lastly, once you have the oil pan on, you're going to want to come up front. Now when this was installed in the Trailblazer, obviously you had a front dipstick. Now you will notice the dipstick hole right here. Now the only thing this is going to be introducing is splash. There's not a sump up here anymore. It's only going to be oil draining down. So what I suggest is just taking some RTV that you used, make sure this is well cleaned out with brake cleaner, push a little RTV in there, make sure you let it dry before the engine starts, and you're not going to have any issues. Lastly, moving around to the back of the block, you're going to want to make sure if you have an oil drain plug for a turbo and you decided not to install the turbo, make sure you plug that up or you will have a big mess. And lastly, while I try to make sure that every oil pan has the drain plug tight, I'm only human and it's possible I might have forgot, so make sure you do that before you put your really nice racing oil in the engine and drain it all out on the floor. So thank you again for purchasing the pan. Again, please contact me at any time if you have any questions. As long as you didn't damage your pan, hit it on a rock or anything. Of course, if you have a leak, contact me. I will absolutely make it right. Feel free, Atlas Industries 4200 at gmail.com. Thank you.